Dr George Beaton, welcome to the Resolution Room.
I'm delighted to be here, Damien.
I'm going to have a crack, George, at doing an intro in terms of your wonderful storied career, both academically and in the professional services sector. Your first degree was in medicine. You've got an MBA and a PhD, so you've had a very long academic career, including as a senior fellow at the University of Melbourne's Business and Law Schools. But also you've had a very practical career in the consulting game, particularly emphasised on professional services. You're currently executive chairman of Beaton, which is a consulting and research firm that works with professional services organisations worldwide. You basically help them align their performance with client needs. And why I've got you, of course, is you're a real thought leader on professional services space, the business metrics, and what the future holds. Have I done your very long career some justice, George, in that intro?
Oh, no, I think you've got it spot on, Damien. I grew up in a professional services environment. My father was a chartered accountant. 3/4 of his clients were medical practitioners, and that stimulated my interest. And then I met lawyers, and I got even more interested because of the nature of the law and the legal system and lawyers themselves.
And we're an unusual breed, it's fair to say, George.
Pretty unusual. I work across consulting engineers and architects and urban planners and accountants, of course, and consultants. And lawyers are peculiarly resilient and conservative and resistant to change.
Exactly. Risk adverse and conservative. We're going to talk about that because two books that come to mind, New Law, New Rules, and also Remaking Law, which is your more recent book. We spoke about the resilience of lawyers plus their risk-averse nature, and you paint a picture in your first book about big law versus new law. And I think it's in a sense been hastened or will be hastened by AI. You were perhaps quite prophetic when you wrote that book back in 2013. So paint me the picture, George, of the distinction. What is big law and how does it compare with new law?
The idea of new law was actually first described back in 2009 by a man called Michael Huber, who's in Kerma Partners in the US. And then the following year, a professor at University of Wisconsin Law School wrote an article on the death of big law.
Right.
Well, I came along and I wrote a post on one of our websites then in the blog called, "Is this the last days of the big law business model?" That generated some interest. So I wrote another post a month later called "The Rise and Rise of the New Law Business Model." And nobody had really published the idea of new law up until that point. And it triggered an avalanche of comments and replies backwards and forwards until in 5 weeks, I actually closed the blog to comments because I had 25,000 words from more than 40 people. And I had a look at this. Well, nobody can read a blog post like that.
Yeah.
It's just a string. So I said to two of my colleagues, let's convert this into a book. And they said, you're on. And 5 weeks later, we published a book called New Law, New Rules, the one to which you referred, Damien.
Yeah. And so big law, it's about the hierarchy. It's the focus on the billable hours. It's invariably a partnership-driven model, and we'll come to that. And it's about conventional service delivery, like the leverage model, if you can call it that. And despite the story of its imminent demise, it's been remarkably resilient. And the other feature, of course, of big law is, as you refer to it, as a tournament of lawyers, the basically lawyers pitted against each other in this environment to make it to the top. All the riches of Araby come when you are an equity partner. Have I captured that well, the traditional notion of big law?
Absolutely spot on, Damien. We're talking mainly about larger law firms, sort of more than $10 million annual turnover, or 5 equity partners, and upwards, up into the billions, of course, these days. We're not talking about small suburban practitioners here.
Yep.
They're important, but they're really business to consumer practitioners, looking after people, mom-pop businesses and personal injury businesses and divorce and estates and so on. We talk about the bigger law firms. And so big law has got a sort of double entendre. It's bigger law firms, but it's the distinction from the new law firms. So we're talking here about business models.
Yep.
A business model is how you make money. how you manage your variable cost, what it takes to generate that revenue, how you manage your fixed cost, which you incur whether you make any dollars or not on the top line, and the result is your profit. So we just talk about the profit and loss statement here. And big law firms make their money by, one, charging hourly rates.
Yep.
Still, by and large, there's a movement towards fixed fees and value-based pricing, but it's still widely hourly rates.
Indeed.
And they seek to maximize their hourly rates. And we are now seeing firms, not in Australia where we are, but in the US, charging $2,000 an hour.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, it's got that high. So the model relies on maximize hourly rates at the top, but a real leverage model about using juniors with lower rates, but for a lot of work to generate the profits. And of course, the other feature of the partnership model, which we'll come to, is of course, there's not a lot of capital investment because the profits are invariably distributed in the main. And you draw a distinction between that and new law, which is what we're perhaps seeing the march of, and I want to come to that. So there's often non-traditional ownership or structures, maybe even owned by non-lawyers. ALSPs come to mind. They may be agile, technologically enabled delivery, much more project orientated. The work is more project delivered. And there's a de-emphasis, if you like, on the classic partnership and a de-emphasis on the billable hour model, potentially fixed fees or value-based pricing. Is that a fair view? Is that how you describe, if you like, new law models?
Very good summary. There is no tournament of lawyers. Because ownership is often, private equity, and in some cases now we're seeing, stock exchange listed sources of equity. Because there's no tournament, anybody can become a shareholder. So you're seeing wider shareholding in some of these firms, non-lawyers being shareholders, other professions, finance people, IT people, marketing people, operations, the whole legal ops phenomenon of how workflows are managed and automated, and the role of technology in that is all starting to boom, I think is the right way to talk about it. And it's being given a massive boost in all respects by AI.
Indeed. And there was a recent article, and you drew my attention to it in the Australian Financial Review, about private equity ownership in law in Australia. Obviously the big one, Allegro, in terms of Slater and Gordon, and that was delisted. But there's lots of other players. And if you look overseas, say in the UK market, which I'm more familiar with, you're familiar with the US market, in terms of, say, accounting and other professional services, it's very much on the march there. And I, of course, had an involvement in a former life with a law firm that was actually effectively bought out by private equity in DWF. So that's a fair summary of in terms of where we're going, potentially. But I want to talk to you about this point before we go there, and that is, why are lawyers so risk adverse? In other words, is it the case, do you agree with the statement that really this change is created by clients as opposed to driven by lawyers? Do you think that's a fair summary by being a bit unfair on the risk-averse nature of the legal profession, George?
No, I think it's both sides, both the supply, the lawyers, and the demand side, the clients. From the lawyer's perspective, conservatism is in their DNA. And we start with the courts. The courts are very conservative institutions, and there's good reasons for that, as I understand it.
Yes, of course.
And appreciate it and value it, not jumping at the latest fad or trend. Everything carefully considered. That filters through the profession and the kind of people attracted to the profession. Not that everybody wants to be a judge, but the role model of the judge and the barristers that work in the courts have a huge influence.
Indeed.
When you look at the psychological profile of lawyers, and there have been large numbers of studies on this, they are inherently conservative people. But the other aspect of it is, in private practice, they make extraordinary amounts of money compared to other professions. I'm often asked by consulting engineering firms, how on earth do the shareholders in law firms, i.e. equity partners, make so much money? We can't do that.
Yeah.
And I say, well, it's how they charge. And they say, well, we charge out at $300 an hour. I say, well, try $2,000 an hour with no write-offs if it's well managed. And, the jaws hit the table and people say, wow.
One of the things that emerged from your book was the remarkable resilience of big law, despite the winds of change and the technological change. Do you think big law has been, and we've defined it, successful to date, largely because they've incorporated new law? Or do you think they're still waiting at the gate of disruption? What's your thoughts on that?
Without using this language that we're using now, there are many, many firms which have innovated.
Yeah.
Legal ops is the best example. Workflow management efficiencies, service delivery, and are innovating now with AI in service delivery. In other words, adding value to clients, which brings a whole lot of unexpected or unintended consequences of it in terms of their billable hours and how they have to change their pricing to accommodate this, or just give away slabs of profit. But it's very hard to get an equity partner unless you know them very well and it's a private conversation. It's never a public conversation. About, what the Americans would say is, how fat's your wallet? How much are you making? The Americans are far more forthright about this, but always in private.
Yeah, always in private.
When it was announced that Kirkland Ellis was now cracking, listen to this, $11 million US per equity partner, everybody gasped and said, well, that's been a trend that's been coming a long time. Just look how they do it. And they are huge in private equity. Capital raisings, mergers, acquisitions, floats, funding startups, the eye-watering dollars that are going into startups these days, tech startups.
Yeah.
Now, not every firm's a Kirkland & Ellis, but there are many in that league, and they have left the so-called magic and silver circle firms of London in the dust and are so far ahead in the profitability stakes that now, to hold talent, the magic and silver circle firms, the Allen Overys and so on, are having to merge with them, because an up-and-coming top solicitor in London who's income-minded, money-minded, will say, I'll join Sherman Sterling. I'm not going to join Allen Overy or, the other firms, because on the odds that I make it to equity partner, my earnings will be 1/3 of what I'd be if I were an American firm.
So this is a fascinating thing, isn't it? Like, it's remarkable profitability. And as you rightly say, it's unparalleled across professional services. But do you think their days are numbered in the sense that with the tech, particularly AI, and the largely commoditization of legal work, can you see this model sustaining? And do you think fundamentally the partnership model may be also under threat?
I think for the foreseeable future, whether that's 2030 or further out, so I'm not talking about 2050 further out, but, for that kind of future, I see it sustaining, because those partners who own these firms are not going to let go. And they will divest the commoditizing work. They will divest work that is being taken by AI. They will divest work where the clients are saying, we can do this using AI. Or, as Pinson Masons did years ago, they will set up their own ALSPs.
Yeah.
Under a different brand. Pinson Mason was a pioneer of 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Way ahead of others.
So that brings to the fore the fact that if you have a commoditized stream, if you like, or a volume-based stream, either in your business or you don't do it, and this is something that I keep coming back to with the age of AI and tech, is that really then the strategic human-centered advice and judgment is actually more at a premium, effectively.
Yes. That saying now we hear in AI, the human in the loop. So it's human plus AI. Or what somebody coined the other day, I don't know if they coined it, but it came to my attention as relational AI.
Yeah. That's
AI,
right.
which enables the relationship between the individual and the client, in this case, to be stronger, and the human to give their full attention to the client as a person, not as 100,000 pages of due diligence.
Exactly right, George. And it's funny now, I'm in a different space than you in leadership coaching as well as conflict resolution. But the irony is, of course, that in this new world, what was traditionally known as soft skills, the ability to build rapport and build relationships and really understand the client, is actually, again, more of a premium. Law firms will need to think very seriously about How do they train the next generation of lawyers in these skills while a lot of work is commoditized and tech driven around them?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And we shouldn't think that only lawyers have this challenge. I mean, consulting engineers, as one of my clients is want to say, if I can't measure it with a slide rule or calipers, it doesn't exist. In other words, I'm only interested in the design and the metrics of the design and the calculations that go into the design of a skyscraper or a bridge or whatever it is. And it's exactly the same in law. There was a view that in B2B marketing, it really was how I think about my supplier. And research about a decade ago started showing that it's actually more about how I feel about my supplier.
Yeah.
Do I trust them particularly?
Yeah.
Rather than do I think they are the best expert that I can, I've got the money to hire because I've got a dispute with the taxation authorities. Now, interestingly, Damien, we do these benchmarking studies and we measure the client's response to law firms.
Yes.
The number one driver of the relationship is, do you have the expertise in my particular area of need? So it is cognitive. Have you done this before?
It's a competence question. Yeah.
It's a competence, technical competence question. Yeah. But then in short order, behind that comes communication. Do you care? Which in that language that we use is, do you really understand my business and its needs and how I'm feeling and what the impact of the decisions I want to make is going to be, on a planning permit, for example? What are the adjoining buildings going to say? Where the shadow is going to fall. And this is not just an engineering question, it's a legal question as well, from planning permits and property development.
That's right.
How much capital should I invest in this early stage before it gets to final approval? Capital I'm putting at risk. From the development side, understanding that, and the client wants to talk about that. And the client wants to feel that you're listening to them. More importantly, give them comfort that you actually understand.
So it's much more like a commercial partnership, isn't it, in many ways?
And it is. And, again, in jargon language, it's co-producing with the client, involving them in a partnership way in the decisions.
And the challenge with big law has been traditionally, it's been all about the lawyers. At some extent, that's what and so essentially, it's about producing the next generation of talent. But now we have to produce the next generation of client partners, and that's going to be much more, and leaders of people, and effective users of technology and project managers. That's going to be really what the future holds.
Well, the future's already here, Damien. It's happening. And I can't obviously name names, that would be invidious, but the firms we measure, and we measure about 50 larger law firms in Australia and New Zealand. You can see the trend over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 years. Firms that are coming into the ascendancy, which are overhauling other firms in terms of their standing in the marketplace, are firms where they are leaders. It's a classic example of a firm who's had a very stable leadership team and a very talented managing partner, CEO, for many, many years. And you look at that person and you look at how that person manages the firm and leads the firm, more than manages, leads the people of the firm and the role model that they set. And it's just exceptional. People lead people and people follow people. As we used to, we don't do it anymore. But when we used to look at why solicitors stay with a firm or leave a firm, the number one answer is the culture, and the culture comes from the leadership.
Indeed. And particularly in partnership models, George, where you have a broader brand, if I could call it that, but really at the coalface, it's the people you work with and your leader partner. And so that's why you see those. We have got a 21-year-old son who's in his final year of arts law, and he's got a clerkship with a great firm and looking to be a graduate. What advice would you give him as a soon-to-be lawyer in this brave new world? What are the skills that he needs to become successful?
Get life experience. Don't jump into, immediately an article clerkship and stick at it. And become a graduate solicitor and a second-year solicitor and a third-year solicitor, because you'll be head down, bum up, doing all the roach work, boring work, that 100,000 pages of due diligence. Somebody's got to read that.
Yeah.
Go get some life experience. Go get another job. Find a client who will give you some role. Don't get into, a track which has only got one direction. See the world, broaden the world. One of our grandsons who said, "I'd never want to wear a tie and sit in an office." And he was a very good student in his commerce degree. He said, "I don't want to wear a tie. I don't want to sit in an office." Well, what are you going to do about it? He's become a jackaroo. And my word, the transformation in this young man, he's been up there since early January, and he'll stay the whole year at least. And you can see the transformation. And now he's starting to talk about, well, when I finish being a jackaroo, I'll have a much better idea what I want to do. Will I go back to my commerce degree, or will I do something else? Because today, university degrees aren't what they used to be, and they're not meal tickets anymore.
They're not indeed. That's great experience, great advice, I should say, George, life experience. So sadly, we're running out of time. So I'll ask you this to end with. What's next for you, George Beaton, and your business? You're still going strong. What's on the horizon for you?
The business, as we know it, is going from strength to strength. We are focused on Australia and New Zealand. We, from time to time, get work from all parts of the world, but our focus and our targeting is Australia and New Zealand. We are so far advanced and have got such a powerful brand in this part of the world, and we dominate. We are without peer, so it would make sensible to leverage that assets, and the next generation of owners in the business will take it and run with it and hopefully grow with it. Personally, and one of the reasons I was very happy to come on your podcast, is I want to develop my thought leadership further in professional services. So, I've written 2 major white papers on professionalism and why professionalism is ever more important than it ever was. And I want to expand that thinking, because we have many neo-professions today. We don't just have the classic professions of, medicine and law, consulting, engineering, and so on. We have many neo-professions, business-to-business services, which have a professional nature, have ethics, which are very strong, often have codes of ethics, often have membership associations which demand compliance with codes, which subscribe, which have university education, which is based in the ethics and the ethos of serving the customer, serving the client, serving the community, serving humanity. And so I think that idea of why professions came into being centuries ago is worth contributing to in a contemporary and future environment.
That's fantastic, George. I agree entirely. In fact, it's really remarkable to me in the next phase of my life, when I've stepped out of a traditional partnership role, how motivated you become to contributing and value adding to the profession, and how proud you are. It's not perfect, but how proud you are of the professional ethos and the people you deal with around you every day. So thank you so much. Sorry we're running out of time. We could talk again, and hopefully next time I'll get you not on this phone, but we'll get you a link that works so we can see each other and we can have another conversation. But please stay in touch, and thank you so much for your time.
I'd love to do that. Thank you, Damien.
My pleasure. Talk soon, George. All the best.
Bye-bye.